Do you want to watch the new Fionna and Cake series but don't know where to start or want to get caught up? Well, this is perfect because I'm going to break down all of the episodes you should watch before watching Fionna and Cake. A Frosty Monarch, Season 3, Episode 20, Holly Jolly's Secrets Part 2, Emotional Connection to the Adventure Time universe. And knowing that we'll see Simon in the upcoming series, this will be so important. Now, another thing that's important is the multiverse. And although the multiverse has been hinted at throughout the series, Season 4, Episode 26, The Lich universe. And we learn about the interconnectedness of various dimensions and universes, something that's probably going to be relevant if the Fionna and Cake spinoff series is set to explore pretty different alternate universes in each episode. By understanding the crucial in the Fionna and Cake series, piggybacking off of that, the very next episode, Season 5, Episode 2, Jake the Dog, continues to talk about Farm World and how Prismo's wishes work. Now going back to Fionna and Cake, Season 5, Episode 11, Bad Little Boy, is the second Fionna and Cake episode in Adventure Time. It explores the dynamic between them even more. And it also adds layers to these characters, most notably Marceline's storytelling. Bad Little Boy establishes the tone and style of Fionna and Cake's adventures, while also showing that they live in a universe parallel yet distinct from Finn and Jake's, making it another great episode for anyone new to the gender-swapped world of these characters. Speaking of Marceline and the Ice King's dynamic, watching Season 5, Episode 14, Simon and Marcy, dives even further to the background between Simon and Marcy, right after the Mushroom War. It reveals how they survived the post-apocalyptic world, and their relationship serves as a touching narrative about the love and sacrifice that magical forces have on one's sanity and memory. Given that Fionna and Cake's universe is also rooted in this idea, this episode is actually really important to understand what magic can mean, both good and bad. Now, remember when I briefly touched on Simon's love partner? Well, Season 5, Episode 48 reveals her in the episode Betty. Betty was Simon Petrikov's fiance before he became the Ice King. And watching this episode before Fionna and Cake is important because it highlights Simon and Betty's connection, which we will probably see more of in the actual spin-off series. And Betty's plot will just continue to get crazier and crazier. In fact, this very episode opened up a time portal, which has never really been seen before, but Season 6, Episode 1, Wake Up, also kind of introduces portals between different dimensions. Not only that, but we actually get a lot better understanding of how Prismo works, especially within the time room. Understanding the mechanics of Prismo's wish-granting abilities and its limitations, specifically how he is the dream manifestation of an old man, and how committing a cosmic crime like killing him can have on universe-altering consequences, provides a lot of context for his role in the Fionna and Cake spinoff. It lays the groundwork for understanding the stakes and rules when dealing with a complex character like Prismo. Moving on though, Season 6, Episode 9, The Prince Who Wanted Everything, is the third official Fionna and Cake episode in the Adventure Time universe. Next up is Season 6, Episode 19, Is That You? This episode also touches on Prismo's existence and introduces the concept of alternate realities again. Both elements are going to be relevant to the Fionna and Cake series. Not only is That You a great episode, but it gives you the foundation understanding of how these complex themes operate within the Adventure Time universe. Speaking of, do you want to know how the Ice Crown works? Well, watching Season 6, Episode 24, Evergreen, pretty much explains it. It delves into the backstory of the Ice Crown and its original intended purpose, revealing how its magic is tied to the wearer's deepest desires, and explains how the Ice King, even really who he is. Another really important episode, Season 6, Episode 38, You Forgot Your Floaties. Again, this is a very great episode in general, but it's crucial for understanding Betty's character and her larger role in the Adventure Time universe. In this episode, Betty, who is on a quest to save Simon from the Ice Crown, works on a transmutation ritual with Magic Man. This episode reveals a magic, madness, and sadness connection and sets in motion Betty's grand plan to affect the magical world. Not only is this episode important to watch before the Fionna and Cake series, but it's also a really important episode to watch for the Adventure Time series in general. Next up, we have our first mini-series, and that is Stakes. This mini-series delves into the backstory of Marceline, a very significant character in the Adventure Time universe, but also might play a really important role in the Fionna and Cake spin-off series. Going back to Betty for a minute, Season 7, Episode 21, King's Ransom, is not as important, but at the very end, it reveals more of Betty's plot to save Simon from the Ice Crown. Now, this next episode is actually huge and very important. Season 7, Episode 23, Crossover. This, again, hammers home the multiverse concept that is very important in the Adventure Time universe. The episode deals with Farm World, a timeline where events unfolded differently, as we know, and Finn and Jake face moral and existential dilemmas as they interact with their alternate selves. Not only that, but this episode also introduces the very concept of how these characters even travel to all these different multiverses. This is a very important episode. Season 7, Episode 24, Hall of Egress, really isn't important to the lore. It's important to Finn's character, but I really recommend recommend watching this episode. It is amazing. But the very next episode, season 7, episode 25, Flute Spell, is kind of important because it introduces Huntress Wizard, a character that we know we will see in the spin-off series. And understanding the essence of Huntress Wizard, her nuances, and her past interactions with other characters in the Adventure Time universe provides important context that could really make our experience of the new series better. But season 8, episode 1, Broke His Crown, is amazing and important because of its exploration of Simon and Betty's relationship. Ice King's crown is going all haywire, and they try and fix it. So they go into the Ice Crown. And who's there? A AI Betty. Simon tries to reason with her, and he actually reveals their very beginnings. And this episode is just so good at highlighting their relationship, which we know we will see in the Fionna and Cake series. Another very important episode, season 8, episode 8, Elemental. Now this might be important in the Fionna and Cake series, but it basically lays the groundwork for how the elements, ice, fire, candy, and slime, operate in the original Adventure Time universe. In Elemental, you're introduced to the concept that there have always been elemental embodiments that affect the world in fundamental ways, even surviving through cataclysmic events. However, it still could be important for Fionna and Cake. But an episode that will be important for Fionna and Cake is season 8, episode 9, 5 Short Tables. This episode is actually really important and super interesting. It starts off as a normal Fionna and Cake episode, with Ice King reading fan fiction. But in the Fionna and Cake world, Ice Queen also writes her own fan fiction, and we get a POV of Ice Queen's fan fiction characters. This episode basically introduces that by just thinking of things, you can make them real. This episode is very foundational for understanding how imagination works in Adventure Time, and I think it will be very important for the new Fionna and Cake series. Now, our next miniseries, the Islands miniseries. This one not only is just a great miniseries, but it gives us crucial background on the humans in the original series universe. It delves into their history, their departure from the main setting, and what became of them. Now, this will be important because it's speculated that in the trailer, that futuristic land of Ooo we see is actually from the humans. So understanding their journey in Adventure Time will be super important. Back-to-back miniseries, but next up we have the Elements miniseries. Betty's role in the Elements miniseries is very important, not only for the Adventure Time universe, but also for the Fionna and Cake spin-off. Her quest throughout this entire time has been trying to find a way to save Simon from the Ice Crown, and this miniseries is basically that. So I definitely recommend watching this miniseries. Now, season 9, episode 12, Fionna and Cake and Fiona, is another Fionna and Cake episode in the Adventure Time series, but this episode introduces a very mysterious element that I think will play an important role in the new spin-off series. What is it? The red beam at the very end of the episode. This raises questions about the true nature and origin of these characters. Are they actually just Ice King's fanfiction or something else? Well, actually, I'll explain my thoughts on this very episode later in the video. Next up, in my opinion, one of the most underrated episodes, season 10, episode 11, Temple of Mars. And this episode will be crucial to understanding the Fionna and Cake spin-off series. The episode delves deep into Betty's backstory, providing clarity on her relationship with Simon and her tireless journey to save him. Beyond revealing the lengths she would go for Simon, this episode really underscores Betty's challenges with self-identity and the blurred lines between personal desires and overall well-being. This episode is great, and it's going to be really important. And this leads us to the finale. Come along with me. Now, I'm not going to talk about this episode because you just need to go watch it, but it kind of makes sense that the finale is going to be important in understanding the lore. And it also sets up Simon and Betty, and this is a much-needed watch before watching the Fionna and Cake series. But not only that, but understanding the official trailer that we got will be crucial as well. Let's break it down. Starting up from the very beginning, we are seeing Fionna and Cake in the universe that we saw them in the first sneak peek, but nothing really new here. But trust me, it gets crazy, which leads us into the next scene, which looks to be set in the post-apocalyptic world of Ooo. In fact, it looks pretty similar to the way we see Ooo and Everything Stays before all the humans leave and Marceline is still in the land of Ooo trying to fight off all the vampires. Speaking of the vampires, this scene offers us 3 characters that we know, Cake, Simon, and Fionna, but 3 characters that don't look so familiar, but we do know them. These are the vampires that we see in Everything Stays, and they'll actually come up later in this official trailer. Okay, I honestly have no clue what the scene is. We've never seen these monsters before, and I don't even know where to go from, so please let me know what you think in the comments. This next scene is actually a lot more familiar. It's the same backdrop that we see when that sea creature tries to fight Simon, except this time it's a bear. So maybe Simon traveled into some weird green, luscious, vibrant tree and has to fight off all these monsters, but this is definitely from the same place. We've seen this before. In fact, this is one of the first images that we saw of Fionna and Cake, and remember this backdrop because we actually do know where this place is now, but we'll talk about that later. And then we see a bunch of explosions explosions, which is kind of hard to make out, but if you do go frame by frame, you see that these are the garlic bombs that we saw in the Stakes miniseries. And later in the official trailer, we might understand why these are being used. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And then we see Fionna falling from the Bee and Puppycat universe, and bam! This is starting to look a lot more familiar with Fionna in her bedroom, and still complaining that she doesn't want to go to work.
I don't want to go to work.
This is a very common theme throughout this official trailer, and that Fionna is very miserable in this life. Speaking of, she's walking down the street explaining how everyone's boring, and who's that? Come on, that's our boy Lemon Hope. He actually hasn't changed that much, but you gotta love Lemon Hope. And then we see the same old shot of the human Prince Gumball, but we do get an updated look at Marshall Lee, and let me tell you, they nailed his character. And then we get our first zoomed out new look of the city that Fionna and Cake are living in, and let me tell you, this city is glitching out. And this isn't even it. There are so many more glitches later in the trailer. And then we get our first look at Simon and the little girl that we don't know the name of yet in the land of Ooh. But this little girl is talking to Simon and asking him why he stopped making these Fionna and Cake stories. And he says he didn't make them. The Ice King made them, which is what I alluded to earlier when we saw the sneak peek, that his shop was closing and the Fionna and Cake story was in the trash. He hates these stories because it reminds him of who he was, the Ice King, and not who he is now, Simon. And then we just get a shot of Ice Fin. Like, what? In the episode crossover, he shouldn't have the ice crown anymore. So what happened? Well, I'll talk about what I think might happen, but it's gonna have to come later because trust me, folks, we are just scratching the surface and the secrets of this new Fionna and Cake official trailer. So stick with me. Back to Fionna and Cake's world, and there are still so many glitches. And then we cut to Fionna at her job as a tour guide on this bus, and she's talking about how she keeps having this dream. And then we get these amazing shots of the Ice King. Well, actually, he kind of looks like Simon beginning to turn into the Ice King. He doesn't quite look like Ice King yet, but also he doesn't look like Simon because he has the crown on. And then we see Fionna and Flame Prince confirmed, but this isn't it. We're gonna see more of Flame Prince later, and it's crazy. And then we get another bombshell because who is this? It looks like Princess Bubblegum, but not at the same time, and she has fangs. Is this the daughter of Princess Bubblegum and Marceline? Could be, but this character I think will actually be super important because I use it to explain what we see later on in the trailer. So remember this character, and also remember that she still has a crown. And then we see a ton of gender-bent human characters from the land of Ooh. Abracadaniel, don't know who that is. Starchy, Fern, that's right, that has to be Fern back there. And then I think we know who this is.
I dream a lot about being a hot dog.
Which makes me a little upset because I predicted that this bus was Hot Dog Princess, but obviously I was wrong. And then Fionna talks about how her dream is special, which makes you think, why her? But then we cut to this beautiful field, and I'm guessing this is where the wish took place. Because come on, blowing on a dandelion, we've all done that after we just made a wish. And then right after that, we cut to the land of Ooh, because in the marketplace, we've seen these characters before, and Fionna looks downright shell-shocked. But notice how she's still in her work uniform, meaning she came directly from her world into this new world. And if you thought everything we talked about was filled with secrets so far, don't get me wrong, it is, but oh my gosh. From here on out, there are so many things to talk about, so stick with me. The first one being them popping up in a cornfield, which we will see more of later on in the trailer, and then we see a shot of Fionna, Cake, and Simon in what looks like a post-apocalyptic land of Ooh again. But what this actually reminded me more of is the Spiky Village that we see in Gut Grinder. Remember, Sharon?
Yes, Cameron, I've been stealing gold.
Why, Sharon?
Then we cut to all these animals, which, if you're not aware, we've actually seen them before in the episode Up a Tree. And one thing I want to point out here is that we know this is in the land of Ooh. But if you look at Cake, it's not the Cake that we know. It's still the Cake from the real world. So I wonder if this means that when they first get transported to this new world, they somehow undergo this transitioning period in which they become more magical because they're in a magical place. But then the very next scene totally throws that idea away because Cake talks to Fionna, and Fionna is downright surprised because Cake used to be a normal cat. But if you remember, Fionna has her uniform on, meaning this is when they just get to the land of Ooh, meaning there was no transitional period. This is very confusing for me, and I still don't really know what it means. So please let me know in the comments. And then we get our first new look at Prismo and his time room. He doesn't look too good.
These two are a long way from home.
Now, a couple things here. He's definitely talking about Fionna and Cake, as they are a long way from home, and he doesn't look the best. But why? Well, I think we'll get an answer to that later in the trailer. And then we cut to the little girl flying Fionna and Cake out from whatever this new hub island is. And we actually see what happens later in the original sneak peek. Now, what could this mean? Well, here's what I kind of think. We know that this little girl is in love with the stories of Fionna and Cake that the Ice King wrote. And once Simon stopped making them, she didn't have any new material to read. So I think she somehow transported the Fionna and Cake from their original world to her world. Now, I don't know how she did it. Maybe she herself went to the Prismo's time room and made that wish, and it coincidentally perfectly lined up with Fiona's wish with the dandelion, or who has some new magical tech that you can hop through different dimensions and multiverses. Don't know, but what I do think is that this little girl somehow got Fionna and Cake to her world and removed them from their original world. And then we just see some more shots that we saw from the sneak peek, and then an updated shot of Fionna and Cake running down the time room with Prismos on all sides. And this is our first look at what I think might be the new antagonist that we first heard about when this show first got announced. And just look at it. He's got the classic villain look. His voice is deep. He just screams villain.
Come here!
But who is this villain? Well, I actually think we might know, and it's from his first lines of dialogue.
You two are a disease.
He's most likely talking about Fionna and Cake, who are now in the world of Ooh and not in their original universe. And who do we know gets mad when things in their original universes shouldn't be there? That's right, Prismo's boss. Now, this is a very early speculation, and I could be totally wrong, but from what we've got to go on, this could very well be the elusive Prismo's boss that we've all heard of. And we actually see him even more throughout this trailer, but more on that in a little bit. And then we see Fionna and Cake looking all scared, presumably from what that red guy just said. But look at the background. They're in the time room still, and that red guy was not in the time room. But I know what they're reacting negatively to, and it's from this scene right here. Keep in mind the time room in the background, same hue as before, Fionna and Cake looking all stressed, and Simon. And we actually do see Prismo right there. But what could they be reacting negatively to? Well, I'm guessing once they got into the time room, Prismo showed them what their universe will end up like if they stay magical in the land of Ooh, and it's probably gonna go kabooey. And that would explain why Simon's there. We know Simon tried to get Betty back after she transformed into Gold Betty from Prismo, and it didn't work. So now they're both just sulking in the time room. So that initial reaction from Fionna and Cake looking scared wasn't from the red guy, but from Prismo telling them that their original universe is going to implode if they stay in the magical land of Ooh. But let's get back to it. We see more of the red guy actually fighting, which we did see in the sneak peek, but this time we actually see more shots of him fighting Fionna and Cake and Simon, meaning that he's definitely after them. Then just out of nowhere, we see Princess Bubblegum, just out of nowhere, but she looks a little different. And if you notice the background, it's the same ice cream universe that we saw in the beginning, when Fionna and Cake was fighting off those bananas. And we'll actually see more about that in a little bit. And then we see our beloved Bimo. He's not gone, thankfully. And then we see Betty. Not Gold Betty, but Betty. And oh my god, this is huge. I can already tell this new Fionna and Cake series is going to mess with my emotions big time. And then if Betty wasn't enough of a shocker, we see Marceline, and she looks evil. And then, you know, if Betty and Marceline weren't enough of a surprise, this is most likely human version of Huntress Wizard. Just has to be. But one detail that a lot of people overlook is look at the tip of her arrow. It's not an arrow tip. It's a piece of garlic. And what do we know hates garlic? Vampires. And if you remember, we did see those vampires in the very beginning. Not only that, but the scene right before this is Marceline. And most people actually believe that these two scenes aren't related. But that's where I disagree. Look at the background of Marceline's and compare that to the background of Huntress Wizards. Come on, they are the same. I believe Huntress Wizard is definitely shooting at Marceline. But why? Well, I think we can get our answer from these scenes. Notice how the vampires are going down and to the right, and then Marceline is going down and to the left, and Huntress Wizard is on the ground, meaning that the vampires aren't attacking Marceline, they're attacking who's ever on the ground, together. And look at the backgrounds too, they're all that dark maroon color. Now what's happening here? Well, it looks like this could be an alternate universe, where Marceline, instead of killing off all the vampires, became the Vampire Queen, which is kind of strange because her name was always Marceline the Vampire Queen. but we never saw her as the vampire queen. And in the trailer, we actually do see her kingdom right there. Notice the maroon clouds? It's the same universe. And Marceline is now the official vampire queen. Now you might be thinking to yourself, maybe this is a flashback, right? But no, because Simon, Fionna, and Cake are in that same universe. And Simon still has that gray streak of hair, meaning it's after the events of Come Along With Me. Very interesting, and I'm wondering where this is going to lead to. And then we see the ice thing again. Now, a lot of people have taken this and assumed that this means we're going to get scenes from 1,000 years later. But that's where I disagree, because if you remember 1,000 years later is very dull and bleak. There's not a lot of color going on. Yes, the Ice Kingdom from this scene and 1,000 years later is the same, but I just think that the Ice Thing made his kingdom like this probably in the span of a year. I still do believe that this is probably a couple years after Come Along With Me, not 1,000 years later. Just because look at the colors in this scene. It's still a very vibrant green. Compare that to 1,000 years later, and there's a big difference there. Then we see the mutated banana guards, but still remember this again because we get another scene of it later down the line, and what I'm about to talk about next is mind-boggling. That scene being Simon running through a forest, nothing crazy just yet, and then we get a close-up look of Simon, but if you notice one thing, Simon doesn't have that gray streak of hair. What does that mean? This is 100% a flashback before Simon found the crown, before Simon became Ice King. But you know what nails this home? The very next scene. Simon stopping Betty from getting on a bus to the airport. Now this might seem like a cute little scene between Betty and Simon, but oh no, it's much deeper. Think back to the Temple of Mars episode, and then the final trial is Betty confronting her past self. And what do we see past Betty's self doing?
6 months studying ancient petroglyphs in the outback? I never took that trip. I met Simon the next day, and he was just so amazing. I put everything on hold to help him search for the Enchiridion.
Cut back to the official trailer, and this is the scene that went down. Simon stopped Betty from getting on the bus to the airport to go to the Outback, but cut back to the Temple of Mars episode. And what does Betty do? She changes the date on past Betty's plane ticket to that very day, so she could take the trip to Australia and never meet Simon.
You'll thank me for this later, past Betty. Okay, gotta go. My flight leaves in an hour.
What this means is still unknown. Whether or not this scene that we see in the official trailer will actually be Betty leaving, or if it's actually Simon stopping Betty from leaving. There is one more thing that I need to add for this Simon and Betty reunion scene. First, I have to give credit where credit is due. I would have never noticed this if it wasn't for @GladiatorGrave on Twitter posting about how Simon in the forest running scene is holding something in his hand, and it looks like a note, or at least a very small piece of paper. Now, what does this mean? Well, it's actually part of Simon and Betty's introduction. I'm just gonna let this play out.
Remember how we met when we both reached for the same book in the library, and when you returned it, you left a note inside because you knew I'd borrow it next? It was the funniest, smartest note I've ever read.
This is huge and almost confirms that it is a flashback, because that's probably the note that Betty left Simon as Simon is desperately trying to catch Betty from leaving. Again, I gotta give credit to where credit's due, to @GladiatorGrave on Twitter, so thank you. Like I said before, this new series is definitely gonna play with my emotion. I can just tell. But on a better note, we get another look at the human Prince Gumball Marceline. I'm so excited. And then we see a bunch of action shots that we actually saw in the sneak peek, and we see that chicken again. There seems to be a lot of focus on this chicken. He was in the official trailer and he was in the sneak peek, and I don't know what it could mean. I don't think we've seen this chicken before. I am clueless. Please let me know in the comments. Okay, now remember from the beginning of the trailer when I said that this looks like the Spiky Village? Well, we get another look into the village in question, and it turns out it's not the Spiky Village. It's filled with humans. But one thing to note here that I think will be important in the future, just look at the character designs of these humans. They are very very different compared to the humans that we know on the land of Ooo. Even the humans that we see on Hub Island, these have a very different art style to them. Not just art style, their proportions as well. They do not look like humans from the land of Ooo. Compare that to the next scene where we see Fionna and the human flame prince. Even these humans have vastly different art styles. I think this will end up being very important, and I think it could be used to tell that there are going to be a lot of different multiverses in play in the series. But yeah, I know I already mentioned it, but we do see Fionna and the human flame prince, which we missed out on in the sneak peek. Oh yeah, and did I mention that Finn and Jake are in this? Yep, old Finn and Jake are in this trailer. And if you look, the old Finn has the tattoo of Jake on his chest. When we first saw this in Obsidian, we all thought, even me, that Jake probably died. But this makes us think otherwise. What could this mean? I am so excited for this series to come out, and you best bet I'm gonna cover it right away. But this actually isn't the first time that we see Finn in this new official trailer. We see him right here, helping Simon, Fionna, and Cake out against the red dude. You can kind of make out his form in the flames. But what if I told you that this isn't Finn? At least Finn from the land of Ooo. This is the Finn from Farm World. But how do I know this? Zoom in on his face, and his nose is a triangle. Something only Finn from Farm World has. Now think back to the Farm World Finn that we saw in the beginning with the ice crown. This most likely is just a flashback, which is good because that would mean a whole lot of things. Simon, Fionna, and Cake most likely ran into Farm World Finn, and that was Farm World Finn telling them his history. We actually see Farm World Finn again for a very brief time chopping some wood. And then we see another universe with tree trunks, and then we come back to this mutated candy dimension with Fionna and Cake fighting their ways out. Now, what could this mean? Because we do see Princess Bubblegum in the trailer, but we also see someone who looks kind of like Princess Bubblegum, but not really. So there are a couple things. That person that we saw that kind of looks like Princess Bubblegum and Marceline's kid, this could be a multiverse where she is the ruler and not Princess Bubblegum, and everything's taken up to the extreme. But what I like to believe is that Princess Bubblegum and Marceline did have a kid, and she took over rule and turned Princess Bubblegum's kingdom into an absolute mess. Because we do see Princess Bubblegum in the trailer, but she looks a little odd. My guess is she's either taken a little bit of the dum-dum juice, or she just loves her child so much that she doesn't care what she does with the kingdom. That's very speculative, but that's kind of all we got to go off of. But please tell me what you think in the comments. And then we get one of the final scenes of the official trailer, with Cake and Fionna both looking at each other contently, followed up by them running down the time room saying the classic adventure time. Now remember, this is the time room that we saw at the very beginning, when Prismo broke the news to them that their universe will implode if they don't return to it. So the final shot of the trailer is most likely towards the beginning of the actual series. And then we cut to the title card. But did you think this trailer was over? No siree. I'm just gonna let the last part play out for you.
Everything bagel, right where I left it.
Did you think we were done here? Absolutely not. Finn's appearances in this trailer is absolutely crazy. But before we dive into that, remember when I said earlier in the video that I was going to explain the Fionna and Cake and Fionna episode? Well, here it is, and it could actually explain everything. And let me tell you why. But first, let me give you a little brief recap of the episode to get you all caught up. It starts off with a classic Finn, Jake, and Beemo escapade, riding down a river with Jake morphed into a dinghy. Finn slays water goals morphing into his wildest thoughts, from giant sandwiches to angry pretzels, while questioning the very nature of boredom. But just when they vow to never do anything boring again.
Let's never do anything boring ever again.
Yes, let's never do anything boring ever again.
Beemo's alarm signals the onset of Ice King's dreadfully dull Fionna and Cake fanfiction reading at the library. Reluctantly, our trio attend Ice King's public reading, and as expected, no applause.
The end.
But just when we thought this was another delusional evening for Ice King, a voice from the shadows claims he got it all wrong. Enter an older Fionna, who dramatically emerges from behind a potted plant and declares she can prove the real story. Fionna plays a tape that takes us on an adventure with her and Cake, complete with door-breaking eyes and eye-rolling puns. They discover a mysterious sarcophagus. Tension builds, but the tape abruptly ends, leaving everyone in suspense. Ice King is so enthralled that he invites Fionna to live with him, which she happily accepts. Our new Fiona starts taking over Ice King's home, sending Finn and Jake into the background. But where's Cake? She dodges the question, citing a traumatic past. However, Ice King's curiosity gets the better of him. Sneaking the tape away from a sleeping Fiona, he learns the shocking truth. The big reveal? Our Fiona is an imposter. The imposter reveals that one evening, she intercepted a strange signal. She was mesmerized.
I watched that tape like 100 times before I finally stepped out of my cave. A new woman determined to find more Fionna and Cake.
She roamed Ooh for years with no luck. She also reveals that Fionna and Cake aren't real.
They're just like a TV show from the past or something.
A confrontation ensues and both realize their flaws, feeling a sense of betrayal and self-discovery. Just when we had thought the chapter was closed, a mysterious red beam shines from the sky onto Ice King's head, flashing images of Fionna and Cake. What does this tell us about the upcoming Fionna and Cake series? Well, it's all about how the old lady even came across the Fionna and Cake tapes in the first place. The old lady, who we know was an avid tinkerer and someone highly curious,
Tinkering with my tech stuff all night.
probably detected the signals caused by the red beam. She might have set up a device to capture or decode this red beam, accidentally intercepting the stories meant for the Ice King. But then why does she say that Fionna and Cake are
Just like a TV show from the past or something.
And
aren't real, you ding-dong.
well, despite her fascination with Fionna and Cake's stories, she never came across any artifacts, locations, or beings that directly corresponded with what she saw in said stories.
I roamed Ooh for years with no luck.
This absence of tangible evidence would have strengthened her belief that they were part of an old TV show, and nothing more. Also, since she captured the stories using a device designed to intercept signals, she probably associated the stories with other broadcast content she had intercepted before, such as other TV shows. Okay, so if that's how she came across them, by intercepting the red beam on accident or on purpose, then what even is the source of this red beam? Who is beaming these Fionna and Cake stories into the Ice King's head? And why? Could this source be a someone or something we will meet or hear about in the Fionna and Cake spin-off series? Well, at first, I thought red and red. This has to be from the new red guy we see in the trailer. Think about it. The red guy is very obviously upset at Fionna and Cake for being in the wrong universe.
You two are a disease.
And constantly hunts them down throughout the entire trailer. So he has some sort of multiversal correctional job. Given that, it would make sense that he could have the power to beam these stories of Fionna and Cake from a different universe into the Ice King's head in a Land of Ooh universe. But then I got to thinking, why would he do this? What motives does the red guy have? Then I started to quickly backtrack because he would have no reason to beam these stories of Fionna and Cake into the Ice King's head. In fact, it would end up being more of a nuisance for him, considering the fact that he is literally chasing them down throughout the entire trailer. So I scrapped that idea and started from scratch. I started to think head that we see from the Fionna and Cake sneak peek and trailer. This little girl, who we don't know the name of yet, is in love with the stories of Fionna and Cake. Remember, this is after the events of Come Along With Me, and the Ice King got saved from the Ice Crown and reverted back to Simon. Wherever he lives now, he ends up keeping the Fionna and Cake stories that the Ice King wrote, and this little girl stumbles upon them, reads all of them, and falls head over heels with Fionna and Cake. However, after the Ice King reverted back to Simon, he stopped writing the Fionna and Cake stories, because Simon didn't write them, the Ice King did. In fact, he grows to hate anything related to the Ice King. Now, from the sneak peek, we see Simon throwing these stories away and closing the door, and the little girl is very obviously upset. Then, in the trailer, she even asks Simon why he doesn't keep making these stories anymore.
Why did you stop writing Fionna and Cake stories?
I didn't write those. Ice King wrote those.
This little girl is in love with Fionna and Cake, and with no new material coming out, how does she quench her thirst for new Fionna and Cake stories? That's right, she finds a way to beam new stories of Fionna and Cake into the Ice King's head, causing the Ice King to write more stories and new stories to appear in Simon's house. This gives us a pretty solid why, but how in the world is this possible? How could this little girl possibly send these visions vengeance of Fionna and Cake to the Ice King from the past. This brings a whole new set of complications. But once you dive into the glimpses of the new land of Ooo seen in the trailer and sneak peek, the pieces start to fit together. We're not just talking about a fresh coat of paint here. This is a world that's undergone a massive upgrade in technological prowess. Just look at all of the tech marvels and futuristic landscapes. Now, given this leap in technology, it's not just likely, but practically inevitable that this new Ooo would have developed stuff like time travel and mind-beaming technologies. Sure, these aren't toys for the everyday person, but that's exactly why our little protagonist definitely had to pull some secret maneuvers to get her hands on this tech. This covert operation, in fact, probably sets the stage for how she starts mingling with Fionna and Cake in the first place. Infatuated by the use of extraordinary technology she's not authorized to access, she inevitably stumbles upon a device that can drag characters from alternate universes right into her own world. And voila, she orchestrates her extraordinary meetup with Fionna and Cake. This may sound like a big stretch, but hear me out. Let's go back to the episode in question, Fionna and Cake and Fionna, to truly understand what this episode means for the new Fionna and Cake spin-off series. This episode is a mind-bender, not just for the sake of it. It fundamentally asks what makes some you. Now let's think about how this applies to the upcoming spin-off. What if the show is setting us up for a narrative that explores these themes of the very nature of reality and how we perceive it head on? Sound familiar? The new land of Ooo has obviously gone through a technological renaissance, one where the borders between reality, fiction, and alternate realities might be more blurred than ever. In the spin-off, we could be taken on a journey where the new protagonists, such as the yet unnamed little girl and Simon, come to question the meaning and significance of Fionna and Cake, just like the old lady did. However, unlike the old lady who resigned them to be fictional characters because she couldn't find tangible evidence, this little girl, empowered by new technologies and sheer will, tries to make them real by pulling them into her universe. And in doing so, she not only makes Fionna and Cake real in her dimension, but also validates the idea that reality is, to a large extent, a construct influenced by our beliefs, our technologies, and most importantly, our stories. This was actually a pretty well established idea in the Adventure Time universe already. The idea that merely thinking of something can manifest it into reality, essentially birthing a new universe where those thoughts take form, was already the widely accepted belief of what Fionna and Cake is, and this just confirms it. This makes the old lady's quest for authenticity and the little girl's search for new stories two sides of the same coin. One resigned to the limitations of her perception, and the other not willing to settle for anything less than bending the fabric of reality to expand her universe, literally. So how does the episode Fionna and Cake and Fionna explain everything? Because it tells us that what we're about to witness isn't just an adventure, but an existential exploration of what makes something real, how stories shape our understanding of the universe, and how technology could potentially help or hinder our journey to find what's real. That is why this episode may just be the key to understanding the fascinating new directions that the Fionna and Cake spin-off could take. But let's get back to talking about the actual trailer itself. And remember how I said Finn's appearances in this trailer is crazy? Well, let's break it down. Our first look at Finn happens within the first moments of the Fionna and Cake trailer. We see Farm World Finn, but there's a twist. He's wearing the ice crown. It's an image that's unexpected, reminiscent of past episodes, yet something seems wrong. Why does this scene set off so many alarm bells? Well, those who are caught up with the Adventure Time lore would recall that in the crossover episode, Prismo teleports the crown away from Farm World Finn's grasp, placing it onto Simon's lifeless body right before the catastrophic explosion of the mutagen bomb. This act turned the wheels of fate and reverting Farm World Finn back to his usual self without the influence of the ice crown. So why does Farm World Finn still have the ice crown? This scene in the trailer is more than just a simple throwback. It's a deviation, a puzzle piece that might reshape what we know. How did you feel when you saw Farm World Finn with the ice crown again? Were you as shocked as I was? Please let me know in the comments. After dissecting the scene frame by frame, even more questions emerge. Is this an alternate timeline or something more? The trailer's intent might be to invoke nostalgia, but it simultaneously sets the stage for a deeper narrative exploration. However, the next appearance of Finn might hold clues to answer all these icy questions. The scene opens with Finn stepping up, fire blaster arm at ready, aiming it squarely at the red guy as he stands in defense of Fionna, Cake, and Simon. But this isn't the Finn we're familiar with from Ooo. U. This is Farmworld Finn yet again. But how can I be so sure? And why is this scene so vital? And how does this answer the questions about the Farmworld Finn with the ice crown? Well, I'll tell you, but first, how do we know that this is Farmworld Finn and not Finn from the land of U? First, it's all about the Fire Blaster. We have seen Farmworld Finn swap out various attachments for his mechanical arm in episodes like Finn the Human before. This theory is further solidified with the next appearance of Finn, but we'll talk about that a little later. Second, the triangle nose. Zoom in. Do you see it? That distinct triangular nose. This feature is unique to Farmworld Finn. Our Finn from U doesn't bear this trait. It's a small detail, but in this multiverse, details make all the difference. That's cool and all, but how does this answer the question on why Farmworld Finn still has the ice crown? As we delve deeper, we realize that Fionna, Cake, and Simon's multiverse hopping adventures most likely led them to Farmworld. The moment with the ice crown is likely a flashback, a narration by Farmworld Finn sharing his life stories to them, and potentially guiding them towards the real Finn from the land of U. I'll touch on that a bit later. The next appearance confirms this, with Farmworld Finn chopping some wood. Notice his hand attachment different from the Fire Blaster, meaning that this is definitely Farmworld Finn, because we know he probably has a plethora of attachments for his arm, and constantly switches them around for what he needs. He's also wearing the same clothes as the Fire Blaster Farmworld Finn, so this is definitely Fionna and Cake. But oh no, our fourth appearance of Finn is this one, with Jake.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Always, bro.
Is this the Finn from the land of U that we all know and love? And is this the Jake from the land of U that we all know and love? That's the million-dollar question. But first, let's lay everything out. First off, Jake is holding an egg, which may look as a one-off joke, but we've actually seen Jake hold an egg very similar to this before. I know, sounds crazy, but we have. Remember back to the episode Imaginary Resources in the Islands miniseries. After surviving the Back to Nature Island and escaping on a giant parrot, they make it to the Imaginary Resources Island. But on the journey over, the giant parrot lays a bunch of giant eggs, and Jake decides to keep one, and he keeps it with them the entire episode, until the very end in which they can't fit it in their pod to the next island, and the egg coincidentally hatches so they can all fit again. I feel like this has to have a connection to that, because him holding an egg in this scene, very similarly to the Imaginary Resources episode, in fact the only time he ever holds an egg like that, has to mean something, right? Maybe he loved the feeling of nurturing an egg or a baby, because he does cry of joy after the egg hatching, that there's an entire alternate reality of Jake nurturing and taking care of eggs. That might sound crazy, but it does kind of make sense because Jake didn't get to do any of that with his own kids, because they grew old enough to not need their parents anymore in literal days. So maybe Jake grew sadder and sadder that he didn't care for his own babies, so now he lives in a reality where he only cares for eggs or babies. I don't know, but these two scenes have to be connected somehow. Please tell me I'm not crazy and let me know in the comments. Second, this isn't Farmworld Finn. We can tell easily by the nose. But then who is this? Well, third, zoom in real close, and yes, Finn has the tattoo of Jake that he had during Obsidian. Now, when we all first saw this tattoo in Obsidian, most of us, including myself, assumed Jake had died, and Finn got this to remember him. But seeing Finn with the tattoo and Jake together in the trailer, that changes things big time. What does this mean? Did Jake not die after all? Is this an alternate universe in which Jake didn't die? Then why does Finn still have the tattoo? It's all so confusing. But actually, I think I might know, and it all begins by looking at the background. At first, I thought this could have been the dead worlds that they are running through, which would make some sense because of the spikes and all the bones lying around. It would also make some sense because we all thought Jake was dead, and maybe Finn is traversing the dead worlds to get him back, but we've kind of already had that plotline before in the Together Again episode, so I quickly scrapped that. Then, I noticed the yellow, goldish, cracked road that they are running down, and that got me thinking, have we seen this before? I didn't think we did, but actually, we have, and it's in the trailer and sneak peek. Now, where exactly have we seen this yellow gold-ish road before? Well, I actually pointed this out in my trailer analysis video, but for some reason, there is a huge focal point on this rooster. It was in the sneak peek and in the official trailer. In fact, the exact same scene. And I kept asking myself, why this rooster? And then it hit me. Look at the background. The wall is the same yellow gold-ish cracked material that Finn and Jake were running down. Just look at that crack. It seems placed there on purpose, trying to connect the two scenes together. So, the rooster was important after all. But why are they running towards him? This is where things get crazy. Abraxas. In Gnostic cosmology, Abraxas stands as a deity transcending both the divine and the demonic, representing the totality of all things and the infinite. Just as the concept of the multiverse encompasses all potential universes and realities, Abraxas embodies the totality of existence in Gnostic beliefs. Abraxas can can be seen as a symbol or embodiment of the multiverse itself. Now you might be thinking to yourself, that was random, but actually it's not. We've seen Abraxas in the Adventure Time universe before. In the finale, Come Along With Me, Ice King recognizes Gulp and we get a flashback to when Simon was researching him. But notice who's on the left page. A being named Malice who closely resembles Abraxas. I mean, just look at the resemblance. But what does this mean? Well, if you look at the very bottom of his page, there's a dark, cloudy sky with an arm coming out of a portal. This, along with what appears to be portals within the snake's loops, indicates that he may have the ability to create and travel through portals. This, coupled with the fact that Fionna and Cake is a multiverse-hopping adventure, along with the fact that Abraxas can be seen as a symbol or embodiment of the multiverse itself, almost screams that Finn and Jake are hunting him down to travel the multiverse as well. Do you think Abraxas will play a central role in this series? Maybe he's the new big antagonist? Or is there another entity or motive we're overlooking? Drop your theories in the comments. But still don't believe me? Look at the design of the rooster in the trailer. Notice how many eyes he has. Why? I think the multiple eyes could represent the many universes or dimensions that exist simultaneously. Each eye could be a window into a totally different reality, suggesting the rooster's ability to see or travel across all these realities. Pair that with the fact Abraxas, being a deity that transcends typical boundaries, could be invoked as a guide or gatekeeper for those looking to traverse different dimensions or realms, especially given the fact that he can open portals. This is cool and all that Finn and Jake want to join in on the multiversal fun, but why? Well, this answers the question that is, if this Finn and Jake are the real Finn and Jake that we all know and love from the land of Ooo. Sadly, I believe that this is the Finn from the land of Ooo, but this is not the Jake from the land of Ooo. I think Jake did die, and Finn was so upset and couldn't get over it that he needed to reunite with Jake again. I think that's why we see Finn with the Jake tattoo still, because he is the Finn from the land of Ooo, the universe in which Jake had died and Finn got a tattoo to remember him by. But he just couldn't live a life without Jake, so he hopped to universe after universe hoping to find Jake. And maybe Finn found that book that Simon was reading all those years ago and figured out how to summon Abraxas to send him to all these different realities to find Jake. This is also probably why Farmworld Finn told Fionna, Cake, and Simon his backstory, because they probably asked if he had seen Finn from the land of Ooo, and they are searching for him, trying to get him back. Do you agree that the Jake we see is not from the land of Ooo? Or do you think there's a twist we haven't seen yet? Please let me know in the comments. Of course, this is all very speculative, and I'm not 100% sure about whether or not these two are from the original land of Ooo, but one thing I am confident on is the connection between the background of Finn and Jake and the rooster, because for some reason the rooster is focused on so much throughout the sneak peek and the trailer. But remember when I said we see Finn 5 times throughout this trailer? We've only covered 4. That's right, there's one more appearance of Finn and Jake, and a lot of people have overlooked it, including me.
Action stuff.
Found you.
That's the Jake suit, and if we know it's the Jake suit, then we know Finn is in it. Is this the real Finn and Jake? Is this a continuation of the Finn and Jake we see here? Let me know what you think, because I'm all theoried out. Even though we just got done talking about a ton of information about the Fionna and Cake series that will be very important, there are 4 quick last pieces of information that will be revolutionary for understanding the series. We just got 4 never seen before Fionna and Cake teaser images, and oh my gosh, they are insane. This all comes from an article written by Karen Idelson, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, from Animation Magazine. The article talks about how fans of the original series have reason to be thrilled because many of the people who made the original series great are back for this new venture, so you can expect some of that original magic to be recaptured. This article interviews a plethora of people from the Adventure Time show, including Adam Muto, and they talk about how the original Adventure Time episodes were broken into 11 minutes each. This spinoff will totally change the game. Each episode is going to be 22 minutes long, and it's going to give the creators more room to unfold the story in a way more detailed manner. The article also mentions that the show is going to be targeted at an older audience compared to the original, which we kind of already knew with the TV 14 rating and the blood that we see in the sneak peek, but it's going to be aiming at people who were kids when the original series first came out, but are now older and might appreciate more complex narratives, which I definitely will. And if you didn't know, the new series features Fionna and Cake, characters who occasionally appeared in the original Adventure Time series. These characters were introduced introduced in the 3rd season of the original series as gender-bent versions of the original characters Finn and Jake. One of the huge talking points for the creators is the freedom this new series affords them. The older target audience lets them explore more mature and complex themes, which I am very excited for. For example, while Finn from the original series was a fearless and selfless adventurer in a magical world, Fiona's character has a more grounded reality. She is less willing to be completely selfless, and her world isn't as magical, which allows for stories that are nuanced in a way different way. The article also points out how music is going to be another key aspect in the show, with established names like Patrick McHale and Rebecca Sugar involved. And man, am I excited for Rebecca Sugar. Not only does she storyboard amazing episodes, but she is a musical genius. The article also mentions that the animation style would be kept close to the storyboard, making each episode look like a handcrafted piece of art, which I'm actually super excited for, because we know in Fionna and Cake we are going to travel across a ton of different multiverses, and if each of these multiverses have their own art style to them, we're gonna see a ton of different variation, and I'm super excited. You can tell that they all put a lot of effort into this show, as it's been in production for almost over 2 years, but I honestly think it will 100% be worth the wait. But let's talk about what these 4 new images mean. This first one we see looks like a continuation of Fionna in that flower field where she makes the wish on the dandelion, and a new character appears who I didn't recognize at first, but taking a closer look, I think it's pretty obvious. This is the human huntress wizard that we see in the original trailer. Red hair, green eyes, and the one thing that convinced me the most is that look at what job she probably has. She's in a flower garden, or some type of garden in general, and she has a glove on. She's definitely a gardener, which totally makes sense for a huntress wizard. This is so cool, but it brings up a lot of confusion, because as far as I'm aware, this huntress wizard was fighting Marceline, and if this is a world where magic isn't there, how does Marceline exist? Oh boy, I am not ready. Now the next one. This is a continuation of the scene where we see Simon, Fionna, and Cake getting attacked by those vampires. Whether this happens before or after, I don't really know, but the background looks so amazing. And again, it's the same background as Marceline and human huntress wizard, so maybe this could be an alternate reality, and it probably is. Now this 3rd picture is crazy. When we all first saw this character in the trailer, we were all confused. At least I was very confused, and I originally thought that it might be Princess Bubblegum and Marceline's kid because she has fangs. But with this picture, I am wrong. And actually, a lot of you guys pointed out in the comments, so good on you. But this most likely looks like a universe in which the candy elemental puts on the ice crown. Or there's an alternate reality where the ice crown doesn't give you ice powers, but it gives you candy powers. Now, another thing to point out here is the background images of this image. It looks like the gender-bent version of Simon transitioning into the Ice King. This is so cool, and is actually probably who this character is here. But then again, this brings a lot of complications because we see the ice crown right there. But if we remember, the candy elemental, this new character, does wear Princess Bubblegum's crown. So what happened? Who knows? Can't wait for it to come out. Now the 4th and final picture. We get another look at Fionna and Cake's real world with a new look at Prince Gumball. And it looks like he's in some type of candy store, maybe around Valentine's Day. A cool little Easter egg here is that if you look at the door and to the very left of it, who does that look like? The Gumball Guardians. But as far as any glitches, I'm not seeing a whole lot, because we know that in the Fionna and Cake human world, there are a lot of glitches going on. But in this shot, I'm not seeing too many. In fact, I don't think I even see any at all. And then in terms of who this character in the middle is, I'm not too sure. I don't know who this could represent, but it seems like it should represent somebody. So let me know. But these new 4 images are so crazy, because even though they're just images, they reveal so much and make me, and hopefully you, so excited for the new series to actually come out. Don't you worry, when this series does come out, I'll be the first one to cover everything there is to cover. So subscribe so you never miss a video, because I'm going to be active. But thank you all for watching, and stay adventurous.